G'day there, you're watching the Aussie BIM Guru, and today I've got a tutorial in Autodesk Revit using Dynamo. So I've had a few requests in previous sessions from people that saw my videos that I know in real life that asked me more about Dynamo Player. So I thought I'd actually do a demonstration on how to set up a script for Dynamo Player and also what it is. So we're going to run through what Dynamo Player is, how to configure scripts to run via Dynamo Player, and then how to run the actual scripts themselves. So what is Dynamo Player? So it's basically an add-on that came in Revit 2017 that's able to run Dynamo scripts but hide the coding environment. So it's really valuable for someone that's either just learning Dynamo and isn't comfortable building scripts themselves yet, or maybe they're a bit intimidated by seeing the coding environment. So on your ribbon, it's typically under Manage, and then it's this button here next to Dynamo. I find usually it's best to open Dynamo first, because sometimes it might need to initialize some routines or packages that Dynamo Player might rely on. So usually what I'll do is open Dynamo, close it, and then open Dynamo Player. So it basically turns the coding environment into something that looks a bit like this. So it's basically a packaged version of a script. So each of these rows in Dynamo Player is basically a script that you're seeing, and this is basically just a big play button. So it also builds the scripts into what I like to call a toolkit. So this could be a set of maybe 10 scripts that all do something that relate to each other. It could be an auditing protocol for sending a model, such as stripping out views, stripping out sheets, and you could have a toolkit people use. And it gives you, I guess, like an arsenal of scripts that you can really quickly call on. But it's important that all users that use Dynamo Player for your scripts, they should be on the same build of Dynamo, which is usually the first number. So if you're on version 2 of Dynamo or version 1, and ideally the same sub build as well, so 2.0.2 for example, which is the latest build that is stable. They should also have all the custom nodes and packages that you've used to build those scripts as well in their library. Otherwise it will fail to run the script, because essentially the script goes into Dynamo and basically executes the script for them. So without further ado, we'll actually do a demonstration of how this actually works. So what I've done is I've pre-prepared a relatively basic Dynamo script that isn't ready for Dynamo Player. So at the moment, the way the script works is it takes a category of elements, gets all the elements, finds out all the possible parameters they have, and then runs a big list of find all parameter values. So basically it gets every parameter value of every element of a category, and then it builds that into basically a table of data that it exports out to Excel. So if I ran this script, basically it would just very basically set up a table that looks a bit like this. The reason why I'm using a node from a package called Bumblebee is because this lets you actually pre-format your table, whereas if I use the inbuilt Excel export tools, it actually goes and resets all the column widths and the data, which I don't like, whereas this one actually just comes and changes the values instead. So I can set column widths, row colors. I've frozen the data as well, so as I move down, my parameters stay and my IDs remain. But we're not really here to teach that script. It's more how do we make this compatible with Dynamo Player, because essentially the only way I can run this script at the moment is by opening Dynamo and finding all my inputs and setting them to what I want. So if I wanted to do walls, for example, I have to come here. Let's say at the moment the script is built in a way where if there's a cell that's blank, it just says no value. Let's say I want that to say something different. I want that to say empty. I have to go find that as well. So what a hassle, especially if I don't know how Dynamo works. So I have to go find my file path as well. What sheet name does it start on? And I don't really know if the script has worked until I open my Excel file. So it's not user-friendly. You'd need to actually know how the script works and also how to use Dynamo at a relatively advanced level to run this script. So what we'll do is actually make this more compatible with the player interface. But if you'll see there, basically, if I rerun this, I think Bumblebee is still writing the data. It can take a little while depending on how much data it's writing. There we go. That's just rerun the data for the rooms now. But what we're going to do is actually set some things up. So if you have Dynamo Player in Revit, when you right click on a node, you can actually set it as an input or an output. So an input is basically something the user will have control with in the Dynamo Player interface, whereas an output is something that will show you when it's done. So let's say that we want to make our categories an input. So we could make this a string, but it's probably better to get a drop down for the user. The reason why I don't tend to use the drop down in the scripting environment itself, if it's not an input, is because each version they might add some more categories, and I find this offsets where the categories are positioned, and it can actually damage your scripts. So I usually use category by name with a string input. What we're going to do in this case is actually set this instead. And let's just say by default we'll have it as walls. And we'll right click and make that an input. And you'll see what that does in a second, but basically it provides the ability for a user to change that before they run the script. From there, we'll feed all this information through. So what we'll do is we'll also give the user the ability to change what their cell says when there's an empty set of data. So I won't change the names of these yet, just because I want to show you how that works as well. From there, we want to let them say where their data starts in Excel. What sheet name are they on as strings, because this will let them type in the data. And we'll also let them pick their file path for where their file is they're saving to. From there, we'll just run this in Dynamo Player as it stands and just show you how that looks. So if I boot up Dynamo Player and I just navigate to where this is, so this is under, I think, a folder called Demo. I think it's in here. So you can't see the scripts, but if you open the folder where it is, it will find all the ones there. So there you go, Demo Script, Dynamo Player. So I could just run this straight away with all the default values, but what's probably better to do is click on this box here, which is Edit Inputs. Okay, I need to close Dynamo first to continue. So I'll just close that. And if I just go to Edit Inputs, it will take you to a different window before you run the script, where you can edit what you're going to input into the script itself. So those things that we right-clicked and made inputs should show up here. It can take a little bit of time to open sometimes. So that it's good, but you'll see that we don't really know what any of these inputs really are, because they still say string, 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 file path, etc. So what we really want to do is go into Edit in Dynamo, and this will open up the script for editing. And we want to actually make these say what the input is to make it more user-friendly. That way the user understands what the script is asking of them. Okay, should open. There we go. So what we'll do first is we'll go to our categories node. I might just close Dynamo Player as well. And what you can do is double click on these and you can say category to schedule for here. And let's go over to here. What should empty cells say? Try to make them as user-friendly as possible, what you name them. Cell in Excel for data to start at. You can always put in recommendations too, like suggest A1. And then here, this is sheet name in Excel. Suggest sheet 1. Just so they know what the best thing to put in is if they're not sure. And where is your Excel file to write to? Okay, so that should give us a more friendly interface when we open that in Dynamo Player again, hopefully. Okay, so we'll just go into those inputs again. And we should expect to have a much more friendly environment. And most types of inputs in Dynamo can be inputs in Dynamo Player. So you could have integer sliders as well, for example. I like to do that quite a lot with some scripts. There you go. So now this is much more friendly. So we can say empty cells, say blank. We start on sheet 1, A1 was our file, so we can navigate now to somewhere and tell the script that that's where our file is. And let's just say we'll do a different category. We'll do sheets instead. Okay, and you can see we're completely hiding the coding environment from the user. And when it runs, it should say run completed. It might have a warning if something goes wrong, which then it will say errors in run or something along those lines. But there you go. You can see now we've got a full schedule of sheet data instead with the IDs. So it's quite a powerful way to sort of conceal the coding environment. What we might do is just do one more thing, which is to add some outputs. So some people like to see when the script has finished maybe some data about what happened, or have confidence that the run worked. So sometimes it's good to add some verification nodes to let the user know what the script actually did. And what we need then is some outputs instead. So we might add a watch node on the end here. So you can't make this an output. It has to be a watch node that's outputting, because it has to watch what's happened. So let's just add a watch node. I know by default that Bumblebee says success if it worked, and it gives you an error if not. So we can make that an output, and we can say success. And we can add maybe a couple of other outputs as well. So let's go and add some outputs. Let's say we want to know how many elements did we actually schedule. So we can say count, and we'll just count the number of items in this list. and we'll watch that as well. Say how many elements scheduled. Obviously they could go and count that in Excel, but we're just giving them a bit of feedback on what's happened. Let's also find out how many parameters are we scheduling. So this is my unique list of all the parameters. So we'll add a watch here as well. And we've got a count later on in the script already. So we'll just feed this back into here. Alright, Skype's getting a bit happy there. How many parameters did we schedule? Okay, and we'll make that an output also. I think otherwise that's probably enough. I think nothing else would really be worth showing in this case. I think that's probably good enough. Yes, that should be right. Okay, so we'll just give that script one more try and just see exactly how friendly that particular script is. And Dynamo Player can actually just sit open on the side. It recognizes when files change as well, so you may need to refresh your script when you're done, just for it to refresh and pick up the new version. So it's quite an intuitive plugin that's quite helpful, and you shouldn't have to install it yourself. It should just come with Dynamo. So once this is refreshed, okay, so we can see a few extra outputs, and outputs are typically gray. They have a little flag next to them to indicate whether they occurred or not. Okay, so we'll just again, we'll just do a test here. We'll just say that empty cells are now at empty. Sheet 1, A1, we've got our paths by file. And let's just do a schedule for rooms instead. And we'll run the script. There you go, and you can see that we've scheduled 14 elements and we've scheduled 40 parameters, and it was successful. So it's a relatively friendly script, and there you go. And you can see the empty cells. So obviously you could take that and go Control A, find and replace, and you could say replace that with nothing and make these cells empty. So quite a valuable script as well. But that's basically, I guess, the in and out of how Dynamo Player works. You can obviously get a lot more creative with how many things go into your inputs and your outputs. I think you can do watch 3Ds on outputs as well, if you want a little display of what happened. I haven't tried it before, but I believe it works. So I guess the other option is you can also use a package called Data Shapes, which allows you to add a user interface on top of that prompts the user to do things in a more structured way. So you have more control, you have the ability to add combo boxes, select all, select nones, radio boxes, drop downs. And the good thing about this is that Dynamo Player has to run the whole script once you put your inputs in, whereas data shaping allows you to put multiple stages in your inputs. So I could actually go and source particular aspects of a project in a second step of my interface. So I could actually say, okay, what are my elements? And then the script could go and read all the data in those elements. And then the second step, it could say, okay, which parts of the data do you want to see? So for example, in this script I just wrote, I could actually say, step 1 is I pick my category. Then the script goes and runs, gets all the parameters of that category. And the second step says, okay, pick which parameters in this set of, in this list of data that I know I can show you is something that you want to see in the actual schedule. So we could narrow down how many parameters we want to see. So it adds a little bit more flexibility to how you can write your code. And I find it's a little bit more presentable as well. You can put logos in it, company branded, so it's a bit more friendly. But that's pretty much how Dynamo Player works. If you've got any questions or queries, feel free to leave them down below, or any suggestions for future topics. I hope you enjoyed the video today. If you enjoy what you're seeing, feel free to follow and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you on the next video. Thanks, take care, bye.